So, the final biogeochemical cycle we're going to talk about is the nitrogen cycle. So, this is the final cycle in our 4C TEAC. When we're talking about diagram abiotic cycles, this is the last one we're talking about. All right, so this is the last time you're going to see abiotic, which means non-living. Examples are water, air, rocks, and soil. Biotic means living, are animals, plants, and any living organism. Okay. Remember, red, bold, underline is where what you fill in for your notes that you should have. Okay, so this is also a refresher. Nutrient cycling. Matter cycles through the environment. Okay, it cannot be created or destroyed, just transformed. And then these nutrients, what we need for life processes, circulate through the environment in these cycles. Okay, so this is the final cycle, the nitrogen cycle. So once again, I'm going to show you a simpler diagram. I just wanted to kind of give you this overall picture here. Okay, so with nitrogen, so nitrogen makes up about 78% of our atmosphere. Okay, it's in protein, our DNA, our RNA that helps build our bodies, and it's essential for plant growth. Okay. Nitrogen gas cannot cycle out of the atmosphere and into organisms, so it's not found in the lithosphere, the hydrosphere, and in organisms. But once it goes through a certain type of chemical change, it becomes usable to the organisms that need it. Okay, so we're going to kind of start talking about some of these different terms. So one term is called nitrogen fixation. This is when it becomes usable to organisms. So nitrogen gas needs to become what we call fixed. Okay, so we have our nitrogen gas here, these arrows coming down, it's being fixed into usable nitrogen. Okay, so it can happen in two different ways. Lightning, all right, or by a certain type of nitrogen fixing bacteria. One crop that has this nitrogen fixing bacteria are what we call legumes. It's kind of like beans, and farmers sometimes will plant legumes in their crops because they have this naturally occurring nitrogen fixing bacteria on them, so it kind of helps add nitrogen to their crops in a sort of natural way. Okay, and then our next thing we're going to talk about is called nitrification. So some bacteria use these ammonium ions to perform nitrification. So they get it from these ammonia. Okay, so it's converted into certain ions. These plants can take up these nitrite ions and nitrate ions, and then the cycle is complete when this denitrifying bacteria converts nitrates in soil back to nitrogen gas. Okay, so that's kind of what this process up here is showing. And then up here, okay, and then it's the same thing down here. So they converted by bacteria, goes through this nitrification process, converts it into these ions. It's used by plants, and then it can go through this denitrification process back up forms into nitrogen gas. Okay, so that's kind of how this cycle works. Right? I know it's a lot of vocab with the nitrites, nitrates, ammonia, ammonium. So this is kind of a large scale picture, and I just wanted to show you that, and then we'll go to the next slide that'll have it in a much simpler kind of context. Okay, so this is what you are going to be filling in on your notes handout. Okay, so most nitrogen is going to be found in our atmosphere. The gas is like it's shown as N2. All right, so our first vocab term down here is called nitrogen fixing. So this bacteria help fix atmospheric nitrogen to be useful to plants. Okay, so that's what this arrow is showing. One example of that was what we call legumes, like I said earlier. So legumes are a crop that can be planted to kind of help um, other crops get nitrogen, since that bacteria is found on their roots. Okay, animals eat plants and obtain that nitrogen. Decomposers, so organisms die, plant matter dies. Decomposers, bacteria, can help break down organisms and release nitrogen back into the soil. Ammonium is created by nitrogen-fixing bacteria and decomposers. Okay, so that's where these two arrows are kind of showing. And then bacteria convert the ammonium into a nitrate and then back into nitrogen gas. So then that nitrogen gas is released back into our atmosphere. So this is kind of a simpler version of that image I showed you. Okay. So make sure you have all of your blanks filled in. So human impacts, burning of fossil fuels once again. It can increase what we call nitric oxide, or NO, in our atmosphere. It reacts, it's going to form nitrogen dioxide, which can lead to that acid rain. So it's changing that chemistry of rain, making it more acidic. Okay, and then it also can cause eutrophication. So we saw that in the phosphorus cycle. So when nitrogen fertilizers are used, that runoff picks up extra nitrogen, carries it to a nearby water system. Because fertilizers are used for crops and for plants to help them grow, there are aquatic plants in like lakes, in the ocean, algae. So if there's an excess amount of nitrogen coming into a body of water, especially the ocean, it can cause algal blooms. And so that's what this picture right here is kind of showing. Excess algae is using up the oxygen, that dissolved oxygen found in the water, and so that can lead to fish kills. Okay. So I think that's the end of this. Make sure you have all of your notes filled out, and that's our nitrogen cycle.